What's up, guys? Welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today we are looking at the making of my cover of Switchfoot's awesome song, Awakening. So I don't have anything else to say, so I'm going to just jump right in. First of all, we'll start with the intro, and I'll try to keep this quick. I've noticed my videos have been running a bit long lately, and I want to try to keep that down, but still deliver helpful info. So we start off with a high-pass kick. This is just a vengeance kick. And then a loop. I try not to use too many loops because they tend to, especially since, like, this is a vengeance loop, and a lot of people use vengeance loops, so they kind of draw attention to themselves because a lot of people will recognize them. So I try to keep them to not become the centerpiece. And you'll hear during the drop, this loop becomes very, I mainly just used it because I liked the sound of the clap, but I used it here with the high-passed kick. The full kick comes in here. And then this little guy did an ultra beat. Just adding the little shaker thing, mainly. Always want to layer drum parts. Well, you gotta be smart about layering drum parts. You gotta know when to add stuff when your arrangement is too sparse, and you gotta know when to take stuff away to make it more sparse. Like in this intro, you'll see later I have like just a ton of drums layered. And then this little arpeggiated synth thing. Just doing that, a little saw synth. And then this pluck doing, if you watch the EQ. Opens up as it goes along, and then there's just a little bit of reverb sent to a reverb bus on there. And then the last thing to lead up into the verse, I have a little vocal swell, which I just took the first note. Actually, I don't remember which note it was. I took a note from the vocalist, reversed, drenched it in reverb, rendered that out, and then reversed it, and then rolled off the lows. So you get. I really like vocal swells. Sounds so sick. Then we are into the, and then the snare, which you've heard on a lot of my work. And then these two plucks. I pretty much always layer synths. I never use just one sound as is. I always layer them to get full sound. So this one right here is given the pluckiness, and then this one is given the sustain and almost a pad-like sound. But you hear as the EQ opens up, it also has a pluckiness to it. So you combine them both, and you get. This one doesn't automate hardly at all. This one does quite a bit. I have the cutoff and the sustain and the high cut all automated to just go up slowly throughout the course of the verse. And then for the vocal, I've got Sean's vocal here. Face down with the LA. And that's just got an EQ rolling off the lows and boosting the highs just a little bit. Add some air, gentle compressor to bring it up front and even out the peaks, and then an echo. This is my preferred alternative to reverb. Face down with the LA curbside ending. Just a subtle slapback reverb, and it just has the same kind of effect as reverb, gives it space and makes it sound, just gives it that sound, but at the same time doesn't. I don't know. It's just a different sound that I really like. So I tend to go for delays over reverbs for vocals. So I have that on 1/8 time. And then we got this pad that comes in halfway through. It was a headlight. Then for the hook, we got. Here we are now with the falling sky. A few pads happening here, so we got this one. That one. That one. This one's detuned a bit. So a bunch of pads layered once again to. Here we are now. And then this little pluck, which is side chained. So this little blip right here, you can't hear it because I've muted it, but really dig that sound. So we got that so far, and then of course the vocal. Sky and the rain. So that all stays the same, and then I add in this beast. Just sounds massive. I use this, it's actually just a preset on the ES2. Yeah, these two. So I have the lower octave. That's the higher octave. And a low octave. So I have them both playing at the same time and then side chained. And at the same time, I have this little arpeggiator, which you don't really hear super loud or prominent, but it's adds some movement to the track. And then 2 snares layered. So this one, a dubstep snare, and this rise by Vengeance. I know I talked a lot about don't overuse Vengeance stuff, but you do see how I have it. I'm not just using this snare rise by itself. I'm using a bunch of different elements, and so it's not using it as a crutch. You don't ever want to use loops as a crutch. You always want to use them to get inspired or to just add that little extra bit of awesomeness to your tracks. So we got the build, and then this. This is a few different rises that I put together and then bounced down. So I have the... And then this little Ultra Beat kit doing right before the drop, which I like how everything is rising, 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 and then right before the drop, it just drops out. Silence is your friend when working on this kind of stuff. So you have this heavy, 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 and then a little break, so when the drop comes in, it's that much more impactful. So just this little... So when the drop comes in, it's kicks you in the face. So for the drop, I have a ton of stuff. Woo! Layered. I'm going to make this smaller so I can see what I'm doing. So I start off with the same, the massive chords. And then... that playing on the left, and this playing on the right. All this is sidechained. And then the main lead, which is also... Hello? There we go. That's sidechained pretty hard with all the lows rolled off and then some reverb. And then just a bunch of pads, really. And a really, really deep bass. And these are both panned, oh, psych, they're not. I have something panned in here somewhere. So we get that's, there's a couple more synths in here somewhere, if I can find them. I'll find them. Oh, here they are. These two are panned. And then this little arpeggiated thing. Very, very, very trancey. So that's it for synths. So I'll just build up all the synths one by one now. Bass. Woo. So it's really not anything crazy. I mean, it was a lot of careful layering and finding sounds that work well together. And one quick note about these videos. I know it seems like, I go through these pretty quickly, and it's like, I added this, then I added this. But really, this took, just this drop alone took days of kind of frustrating trial and error work. So don't ever think that this kind of stuff is quick or like, oh, I knew what to do and I just put this here. It took a lot of trial and error and figuring out the best sound. All right, so that's it for synths, and now we're going to go on to the drums. So starting off, I'm going to unsolo the sidechain because I don't need it anymore. Start off with this. This is also from a loop. Layered those 2 loops. The kick, which is super heavy. This is just adding another snare layered with the clap, just subtly in there to add some thickness. 909 hi-hat, pretty self-explanatory. This little guy and some movement. And then a real hi-hat sample. And then another snare sound and another. Oh, and another bass I forgot to mention. Oh, and this crash. So I'll just build up the drums piece by piece. I'll just loop this. And then lastly, the kick. And that's about all the elements that went into the drop for all 3 drops. On the next few drops, I added a couple more pads, but that's basically it. So that's quite a lot. So one more time, I'm just going to build this whole drop up bit by bit. Starting with, I gotta have my sidechain on. Playing the chords, you get the whole epic drop. And this, like I said, this stays the same. There are a few more pads that I added, but nothing too extreme. And then you'll hear the little, the plunk, plunk, plunk from the hook. This element right there, that comes back later in one of the drops, and it's still side chained, and I have that come back. And then for the second verse, it's very much similar to the first verse, except I had a kick come in at some point. Moves out a bit. These dreams started singing to me out of nowhere. Processing on the vocals the same, and then the pad in there. So pretty much all the same for that. Pretty straightforward, except for the kick. And then basically the same rise as before, except it's a little more by itself. Keep the arrangement interesting. And then I have the second drop is actually the hook. And for the vocal here, for the vocal on the hook, so far the vocal's been very clean, very pristine. On this one, I actually added, in addition to all the same plugins from earlier, I added a distortion. So if you can hear that by itself. Here we are now with the falling sky and the rain. We're awakening. And I, if you watch my videos for any length of time, you know that I really, really love distortion. That's just, that effect does so much. And maybe it's just the way I hear music, but distorted vocals are an awesome thing. And so yeah, I distorted this slightly, and it just adds some aggressiveness to it, some energy to it. So here we are now with the falling sky and the rain. So just a subtle amount of distortion, pretty awesome. And so that's the second hook. And then I did a little vocal chop thingy, so I'll play that by itself. And as you can hear, this one is crazy. This one's bit crushed and distorted. Bit crusher, I love bit crushers, so I have that at 3-bit. And then a distortion on top of that, so it's just nasty. And I really like that. I wanna wake up kicking and screaming. And then I went back for to the clean vocal for the little breakdown section here, the bridge. I wanna wake up. And that's just a couple of pads. Just playing on in the background, and then it slowly rises. And you've seen all the effects I've used for the rises before. And then this part, which I dig. I'm pretty proud of it. I just like the rawness of it. So this is just the drums by themselves, and then the vocal through the crazy distortion and bit crusher. So you can hear it in all of its distorted glory. And And then this bass, except to knock it down. Like that. And that slowly adds elements over time. And now I have that ramp going on in the background all this time as well. You can hear it just a little bang. Some and then, of course, the hey right on the snare right before the final drop. And with this drop, it's got quite a few pads on it to add a lot more. And then you'll notice that it's it doesn't have the drop out. It's just full on. And yeah, and then it just ends and I let it trail off. So that is the creation of Awakening. Hopefully, as always, this was interesting and or helpful for your own productions if you are a producer. And I will see you guys next week.